It brings me so much joy to see so many faces that I know and love, and so many new faces that I am seeing for the first time. What a gift to be with you all today, and what a real gift and an honor it is to be with the incomparable Tamar Biala, my teacher. But before I give her a proper introduction, I am Rabbi Sivan Rotholz. I am the Director of Adult Education at Central Synagogue, in partnership with our programs team and in gratitude to Marina, who is here with us today and doing all the lovely things like sending you messages telling you that she's about to let you into the room. I am really thrilled that we are all here together to bring some Midrash authored by Israeli women on the theme of women of Exodus as an entry point to Passover as we prepare for Pesach this year. It is really just such a gift to be here doing this with you today. We're going to start with a little bit of tachlis, a little bit of nuts and bolts about how things are going to run in the Zoom meeting today. First of all, we are recording. Yes, we are. We are recording. And we're going to make this available publicly afterwards. So knowing that if you do not want to have your camera on, you're invited to honor that. I want to invite you to use the chat throughout this program as a way to communicate with one another, but not as a way to get your questions or your voices into the room. Marina will be monitoring the chat to make sure that anything that needs to be brought into the room can be, but otherwise treat the chat as your little group conversation among one another. And we will have opportunities throughout the program for us to unmute and to ask questions and have a conversation together as a group. Finally, before you ask a question or offer something, if you would be so kind as to raise either your electronic hand, if you know how to do that, or to wave an actual hand, etc., for the camera so that we know to call on you so that we're not talking over one another. By way of introduction of Tamar Biala, Tamar Biala is an incredible scholar of many things, and her specialty, or one of her specialties, is Midrash. And specifically, she's spent her life's work is in collecting Midrash that is written by Israeli women. And that is the first Midrash ever that we have collections of that is written in the rabbinic style. So Midrash is the interpretation and commentary that arises from questioning what's written in the Bible. And the rabbis, with a capital R, who founded rabbinic Judaism, wrote an incredible amount of Midrash that's become formative in Jewish life. And for thousands of years, that practice was only available to men. And so now, for the first time on the world stage, we have the opportunity for women to participate in this. And Tamar Biala has two collections of this Midrash in Israel, in Hebrew, that are formative. Selections from both have been published in an English translation by Brandeis, and a second volume, there is Dirshuni, the incredible Dirshuni. Get yourself a copy of Dirshuni from Brandeis if you don't have it already. A second volume of Dirshuni in English from Brandeis is forthcoming. Among that will be Midrash written by Israeli women in response to October 7th, which many of you had a chance to study in depth with Tamar in a class that we offered here at Central recently. But today, we are going to be focusing on Midrash from Dirshuni that is centering the stories of women of Exodus. Tamar is a teacher in batei midrash and synagogues and yeshivot and elsewhere all over the world. She is an absolutely incredible teacher. I am truly gifted and blessed to call her my teacher, and I'm just so thrilled to bring her to share her gifts with all of us today. The last thing we will do before Tamar takes over and you can stop hearing me talk is we're going to say the blessing for Torah study. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to invite you to be muted so that we can say this aloud together without sounding cacophonous. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And the last thing I'll say about Tamar as I hand this over to her is that she's also one of the powerhouse women behind Toratah. So for those of you who have seen Toratah celebrated at Central Synagogue or are familiar with this project, which is the regendered Hebrew Bible, Tamar is also one of the incredible women behind that project. So without further ado, Tamar Biala.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid that if I'll say anything, I'll ruin the impression. So toda rabba, Sivan. So I'm here in Jerusalem, and I want to share with you midrashim that Israeli women wrote over the last 20 years, that I've been collecting for really over 20 years. And they imitate the format and the literary vehicles of the rabbis to cry their call, their moral calls, their existential calls, their moral demands. Um, so um, we have only less than an hour. I hope we'll make it to read two midrashim that were already published in this volume of Dirshuni. And in the end, I will share with you um, um, maybe a midrash that will be in the next volume of Dirshuni that I received from someone that we have learned together, her piece from Kfar Aza. So she also wrote something for Pesach, so I'll mention it in the end. It will really, for me, will be closing a circle because we learned her piece. That was the first midrash we learned when in the course of midrashim after October 7th. So um, you can imagine that when we offered women to write midrashim, we told them that the rabbis wrote midrashim on the Bible because that is what they decided what the Bible is. They sanctified a series of books, and then immediately they started interpreting it because as the years went by, their theology wasn't the theology of the Bible anymore, nor the norms, their morals. So they used midrashim to match between their inner world or social world and the holiness of the Bible. So in order to keep it holy, even though it says many times things that you can't stand, so you interpret it in a different way that will say what you think should be said and declared. So now these women in Israel, women from all denominations, including very secular women that love to study Jewish text and know how to play the game and how to imitate the literary vehicles of the rabbis. These women are writing too in order to express their, as I said before, their calls. So we will read today these two midrashim. The first one is by Gili Sivan. Gili is a kibbutznikit from Saad in the Negev. We learned, I think I mentioned a midrash of her because she was, kibbutz Saad wasn't harmed on October 7th, only because the folks from the other kibbutzim, while they were being shot and in the shelters, called the other kibbutzim to warn them. So they were warned early enough, which was just a few minutes before the terrorists arrived at their kibbutz, but they already locked everything and defended themselves. So they were evacuated for a long time because the whole area was dangerous. And so Gili, we read her midrash in the past, and now we're going to read her piece, and something that has to do with Pesach. So she talks about Bitya. Bitya or Batya is the name of Pharaoh's daughter. This name is not mentioned in Exodus. It's mentioned only in Chronicles. And she will ask, Batya is daughter of God. So she's asking, is she the daughter of Pharaoh or the daughter of God? Why is this her name? And what she's going to do in her midrash is she's going to talk about this daughter of Pharaoh that took the child of the strangers, not only of the strangers, of the her father thought, ordered these kids to die. She recognized that it's a Hebrew child. And so she noticed that the verbs in Exodus that describe what Bitya did appears also the same verbs in the prophecy that we read on Yom Kippur in the morning when we read the Haftarah of Yom Kippur, the call, the demand not to fast for the sake of fasting or, to sacrifices. God tells the prophet to say that I'm not interested in all of this. I'm interested in you opening your doors, letting the miserable people in. So it's the same verbs exactly that appear in this prophecy and in the story of Bitya. So let's see how she noticed it, what she did with this. And this is a political midrash. She wrote it, I don't know, maybe a decade ago. In Israel, you know that there are foreign workers, both in agriculture and taking, caregiving for elderly. And I don't know how it is in America for foreign workers. In Israel, they're not allowed to bring their families. So they are treated nicely. There are a lot of social laws taking care of them, but many of them are illegal and they are really miserable. So having that in her mind, Gili Sivan wrote this midrash, really looking at Moshe as not a foreign worker, but maybe a child of foreign workers, that their status is shaky. I understand that in America it's much, much, much worse now. So maybe this midrash was born really to be read in America these days. So let's read it together. Is there anyone that volunteers to read it? I can't see. So Marina, do you see?
I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand yet. Oh, Jenny is raising her hand. So, Jenny,
You'll
unmute
read.
yourself and read.
Yeah, so just Jenny, notice that the beginning is not the midrash. It's just verses from the Bible that we will meet again in the midrash. So let's read them too and be introduced, and then we'll see how they pop up in the midrash.
Okay. Bitya, the daughter of God. And Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe in the Nile, and her maidens were walking along the Nile. And she saw the ark in the reeds, sent her slave girl, and took it. And she opened it, and she saw the child, and it was a young lad crying. And she took pity on him and said, "This is a child of the Hebrews." And these are the children of Bitya, the daughter of Pharaoh. Lo, this is the fast I desire. Open the manacles of evil, untie the ropes of the yoke, let the oppressed go free, and break every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry, and let the wretched poor take them into your home. If you see someone naked, clothe them, and do not ignore your own flesh.
Sometimes, we see these verses in the prophets, and that's the justification for the whole project of Judaism. Unfortunately, it didn't make impression on the people that were supposed to hear the prophecies, and the destruction happened again and again, and God forbid, I hope it won't happen this time, the third time. But so this prophecy from Isaiah is what we read on Yom Kippur, and if you can, maybe you can already see that some of the verbs appear in the story of Pharaoh. So let's see what she's doing. Jenny. Jenny, will you read?
Yes,
please?
I will. Sorry, I was taking notes. Bitya, daughter of Pharaoh. Pharaoh's daughter or God's daughter? Well, she took herself out from under her father's authority, for she pitied the boy, even though she knew her father had commanded, "Every newborn boy you will cast onto the Nile." The Holy One, the Holy Blessed One said, "She who took pity on my child will be my daughter." And that is what it says, Bitya.
That Bitya, Batya, the daughter of God.
Yeah, thank you.
So she moved from being a daughter of Pharaoh as if to God adopted her.
And how does pity happen? Go and see what the prophet Isaiah learned from the deeds of Bitya, Pharaoh's daughter. And she saw and did not look away, as it is written, if you see someone naked, clothe them, and do not ignore your own flesh. And she sent her slave girl, and did not shutter the blinds of her heart, as is written, set the oppressed free.
We'll
And
stop
she-
just for a second. I just
Sure.
want you to see the structure. Every time there is in bold is the verb that is used in her story, and then she quotes from Isaiah and show that the same verb appears there, as if he learned from her what is the good, and he teaches us. So seeing is the key for everything, and it's so easy, we know, not to see. Okay. And sending, so she sent her slave girl, but actually in Hebrew, the word is that she sent amata. Amata is both her hand, her ama, or her slave girl, which is also ama. So either way, she acted to get the child. Okay.
And she took the ark and did not fear for her own life and say, what has he to do with me? As is written, and the wretched poor, take them into your home. And she opened her heart to a foreign child and did not say, he isn't one of ours, as is written, open up the manacles of evil. And she saw him, the child, and she saw again that she returned and looked in his eyes, as is written, if you see someone naked, clothe them. The Holy Blessed One said to Pharaoh's daughter, you, with the Torah of kindness on your lips, and your mouth opened with wisdom, you taught my sons and daughters the secret of opening the heart. As is written, and she opened. Who taught the gaze that sees in the child the lad that he will become, as is written. And she saw him, the child, and was a young lad. And you taught the secret of listening to the weeping of foreign children, as is written. This is a child of the Hebrews. You will be taken in under my wings, and you will be a daughter to me. Your name in Israel will be Bitya.
It's Bitya or Batya. It's
Batya.
sometimes
Okay.
it's written like this, sometimes.
Not only that, but the Holy Blessed One commanded her and said, go and fetch that secret of compassion to all who come to this world, you who rebelled against the idols of your father's house, the idols of racism.
So the ethical demand leans here on the theological understanding that racism is an idol. It's a fake belief. It's a lie. It takes you away from life, from holiness. So let's just take another look at the Midrash. When I read it every year, and I will be able to send it to you later as a text if you would like to read it in the Seder with your families. Every time I read it, I remember, I forgot, memoirs that I was reading when I was from 10 on, I'm afraid, 10 years on, maybe even earlier. I was obsessed with Holocaust memoirs. My grandmother had those, the Eichmann trials. So they have all the testimonies in thick volumes. And I knew it's not appropriate for my age, so I would hide behind the curtains in the living room and read it obsessively. And then I'm sure that in America also there are endless memoirs. And so many people made it because people like this opened their houses, hid them in weird places with the risk of losing their lives and their beloved one's life. Many of them actually did. So it's not easy to open a home. I'm not talking about the risk of being killed. It's to open the home to someone that maybe will steal something, that maybe will behave weird and will embarrass us. Maybe he's a sociopath and do something. We're so scared of strangers. I was wondering, I would like to take this midrash to your life. Where does it meet you? Does it have any echo in your heart to try to make, to widen a little bit more this year?
Beautiful. Do you want to stop the share and open up to conversation, Tamar?
Yes.
Beautiful. So, not to answer your question, although I'll be very curious to hear how this is resonating for people in their own lives. But just looking at the Midrash writ large, I'm just so struck by this idea of Isaiah, this great, very male, very patriarchal prophet, learning his Torah, learning his lessons about how we are supposed to live from Bitya, both because Bitya is a woman. So this idea that the ultimate teacher of someone who we revere as an ultimate teacher, that his ultimate teacher would be a woman, but also that his ultimate teacher would be a foreign woman, right? And that really intersects with where this lands, which is the teaching about how we're really supposed to welcome the stranger, and even taking that so far to the extreme as to say that racism is a false idol, right? So I'm very struck by that setup by the author of this midrash, lifting up Bitya in this way, and it honors the way that the rabbis felt about Bitya. Bitya, the Pharaoh's daughter, is unnamed in the Hebrew Bible, and the rabbis name her Bitya. And the rabbis name her Bitya because they want to honor her, because they so celebrate what she did by saving Moses and by defying her father to do it. So this midrash takes that rabbinic honoring of Bitya and then elevates it and makes her a teacher of someone who in his own book can be quite misogynist. So, lovely to turn that on its head and have him learning from a woman in this way. Marina, if you want to switch us to like a tile view so we can all see one another, we can open it up to some comments from the group. Evan and then Robin.
Hi, this is a really interesting teaching. So there are two things that kind of dawned on me. The first one, on the part of the reading where you had the verbs, right, where you had 4 or 5 different steps, it kind of dawned on me that each one of those steps, it would have been understandable for her to stop and not do something, but she acted and went the whole way through. And I think that, as we kind of look in our own environment today and look at, yes, I want to protest, I want to do something, sometimes we don't look and do all the way things through. But Rabbi, as you said something about Passover in there, it triggered in there the irony of when I looked at all of those steps, I kind of thought of Diana. We say Diana, we keep saying, well, if you only did this, it would have been sufficient. It would have been sufficient. It would have been sufficient. But in this writing, stopping at one of those steps wouldn't be sufficient. And she actually had to do all of them to really get the power out of it. So that just kind of jumped out at me when you said that.
It's really beautiful, right? If only she had seen, it would have been enough. If only she had sent, it would have been enough. But it wasn't. It was actually the collective actions of one step and then the next and then the next. And it's not in those verbs, but where the author of the Midrash lands is that all of those add up to compassion. That what we learn from Bitya is how to act in the world with compassion. It's a really elevating compassion as a Jewish value that even our great teachers like Isaiah should be learning from, and that we should therefore learn from. Beautiful. Robin.
I'm relating to this in a very personal way. Because right now, between what's happening in Israel and what's happening in the United States, it's very, very easy to feel, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? It's very overwhelming. And it has this reading sort of crystallized to me something that's sort of been growing in me, which is that I can't do a big, giant thing, but I can do a thing that comes before me that I can do, just as Bitya did. She didn't really think in terms of what larger thing am I doing. She saw a child. She saw a child in need, and she simply did what she could do in the moment. And so that really struck me. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think we can expand that into the larger context of the women of Exodus writ large, that each of them, from Shifra and Pua, the Hebrew midwives, to Yocheved, the mother of Moses, to Miriam, to Bitya, each of them do the one next right thing. And then collectively, we see how they save Moses and thereby all of the Jewish people by each individual person doing that next right thing. Beautiful. Anyone else? Questions that this Midrash, that you have in response to this Midrash, things that you're thinking about as you think about it in your own life in this moment or in Passover, as Passover approaches?
I would love to move to the next Midrash that will, oh, I think Andrea?
Okay, beautiful. Andrea, we're gonna pause and move to the next Midrash, but bring your comment in the next discussion if it's still relevant.
Okay, so I'm skipping a midrash on the four daughters. You can imagine there are several midrashim on the four daughters. Sometimes it's different women in the Bible. Sometimes it's different phases, mental phases of women. And we will read now a midrash on the Shifra and Pua. We actually, through the Bible, we don't know if they were Jewish women or not. They are meyaldot ha'ivriot. They are the helping the Hebrew women deliver. So we don't know who were they. The rabbis decided that this one was Miriam and this one was her mother Yocheved, or this one was this was that. But again, these were two good women. From this midrash, we will learn that they weren't only good; they were extremely courageous, of course. So let's read this midrash slowly. Maybe I need another volunteer, please, that will be willing to read the piece for us.
Jill, go ahead.
So Jill, please read the verses, please, and we'll notice something interesting there.
He, the king of Egypt, said to the midwives, "When you deliver the Hebrew women, look at the birth stool. If it is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, let her live." The midwives feared God in awe, vatirenu, and did not do as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live.
Thank you. So what's interesting here is it's not the only time in the Bible that this game appears in the Bible itself. It's many times, you should know, the Bible itself is playing the game of Midrash and takes a certain root or something that sounds similar and but has different meanings in the same paragraph and plays with it. So here it happens between the words to see, vatir'ena, lir'ot, and vatirena, which means to have awe, to fear, liro. So there is a Hebrew lirot, to see, and liro is to be afraid of, is to have an extreme awe to someone. So we see that with these ladies, the midwives, these two verbs appear. And now let's see what Orna Peltz, I didn't mention who she is. She's a I think she's a Reform rabbi, or at least I know she works at HUC here in Jerusalem. She's fantastic. Her pieces are wonderful. And she also published a children's book. I don't know if it's in English too, on Miriam. It's if it is, I'll find and I'll let Rabbi Sivan know about it, because it's really, really a fantastic gift for Pesach. But I am not sure it's published in English. It's a very, very witty story about Miriam. So let's see what Ona thinks about the midwives.
The midwives were asked, "Where did you get your fearful awe of God?" And they answered, "From the great and deep things that we saw at the birth stool, from the mystery that embraces us morning and evening, human being after human being coming into the world. Where does he come from and what does he bring with him? The goodness that her mother sees in her, the compassion and the love that he awakens, crying babies bursting forth from exhausted bodies, and the soft seal of God's finger imprinted on their faces."
So just a second, we'll stop. So when they're asked, where did you get this awe or courage? Their answer is from the blood on the birth stool. For us, maybe it sounds natural, or maybe many of us experienced births, others saw, and they know how new life look, with all the promise and all the pain. So this is where they see God, but now they're going to be challenged brutally about it. Let's continue.
The midwives were challenged, but didn't it happen at Sinai that all the people saw Roim, the thunder and the lightning and the voice of the shofar and the smoking mountain, and the people saw it and trembled and stood far off? And Moshe said to the people, "Do not fear, al tiru, for God has come to test you, to keep the fearful awe of God, virato, before you, so that you will not transgress." The fearful awe of God comes from the place of thunder and lightning.
So the midwives are challenged by, I can figure out by the tone, the theological tone, by the Jewish philosophers of the Middle Ages or something, those that think that awe comes from a transcendent experience. It comes from something abnormal, above nature, that something shakes us or tours the regular, normal lives, and shows us that there is something beyond all of this, bigger, more meaningful. So they said, and when God appears on the mountain, these verbs appear, to see and liro, and to have fear of God. So the big impressions on life that make us our moral compass, what it is not to see a woman screaming on the stool. It's supposed to be something transcendent, something different, not the ordinary. Challenging the midwives, they are no, not. How do you talk? Let's see what the midwives are answering.
And the midwives answered, "There is fearful awe that comes from external seeing, and there is fearful awe that comes from internal vision. A person can be frozen in terror witnessing a supernatural miracle, which awakens and strengthens her sense of fearful awe. But for us, it does not work like that. Our fearful awe is not in the heavens. Our fearful awe of God arises precisely from within nature, from within the pain of what we witness on the birth stool. From there, we learn to choose what is good, to protect life, to fight against death, and to resist evil."
So they insist on their theology, which is more immanent. We see God in the places that are considered not holy. Women's blood, in the Bible are it takes you far away from the sacred. You can't come close when you're nida, or things that you touched, etc. So here it's the opposite perspective. They don't see the ordinary as something ordinary. They see the ordinary as magical, as a miracle. And they insist that this is where we met God and where we learned the priorities in life. And we were willing to take the risk and do what the right thing. So I'll stop sharing and let's hear where it meets you and your experiences.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tamar. This is such an incredible midrash, and it has me thinking really, really deeply about where we see God, where we encounter God, what inspires awe in us, divine awe. First of all, I'll say, for anyone who has ever been on the birth stool or been in a room and witnessed what happens in the birth stool, we probably are already aligned with the midwife's argument that that is a moment where where transcendence has in fact happened and where we have met divinity, encountered divinity. So there may be something just in our kishkas, in our guts, that feels right about the midwife's perspective here. But I'm also thinking about just this big theological question, this big Jewish question of, is God in the miracles, the big miracles, the thunder and lightning, the pillar of smoke, the burning bush? Is that the only place that we see God? Or do we see God in the holiness of the daily life and in the holiness of creation on the human level as well? I'm reminded of this incredible poem. I'm going to put a link to it in the chat for anyone who wants to check it out later. It's on the second page of this document that I just shared. This incredible poem called Miriam Argues for Her Place as Prophetess by Chava Ram. Which is a modern midrash in the form of a poem that is making this same argument, that's saying, listen, Moses clearly encountered God on Mount Sinai, right? That revelation happened there, but that revelation is happening down here too. And she specifically channels in this poem the midwifery and the birth of babies that happens down here, and how the work that is done of bringing in new life into the world is just as holy and just as important as what we tend to think of as holy on what is happening up on the mountain. So I am grateful for this piece, and I do hope that you share it with us so that we can all read it on Passover. Other thoughts or questions or ideas that this midrash is bringing up for you as you're encountering it? Yeah, Andrea.
I was thinking as you were speaking and as we read the midrash, a little bit of similar to the holiness of the everyday, of the birth stool, which is a big one, right? But like I was thinking a little bit of Baruch Spinoza and his thoughts of how God and nature are intertwined. And I felt very much like, I feel like that is personally how I see God every day, in a flower, in a tree.
Yeah, beautiful. That panentheism of Spinoza, that God is in not only every one of us, that we're created b'tselem Elohim, but also that God is in nature. And for so many of us, especially when we're so far from the biblical miracles of revelation on the mountain or pillars of smoke and fire and burning bushes, for us today, it can often feel much easier to access God and to see God in the miracles of nature. Beautiful. Allison.
I think, Rabbi, you basically just said what I was thinking, which was, how to maintain my faith, and how the Israelites, the Israelites didn't experience hidden miracles. They experienced the parting of the sea, and and it's harder for us today if we're not aware. So, part of mindfulness practice for me, which is important to my kind of spiritual condition, is seeing the miracles that are in front of me. They really aren't hidden if I open my eyes. And that's what I get from that.
Yeah, beautiful. Such an important next step of what this midrash invites us into. If we're thinking about, well, do miracles happen in these big, awesome moments, or do they happen in the everyday? And then the next question is, for us, we who aren't seeing those miracles in the same way that people did in the Bible, how do we maintain our faith? Where do we find our awe? Such an important question, and is the work of Jewish educators, is the work of clergy, is the work of all of us today who are in this business of trying to make meaning and bring spirituality out of life today. Beautiful. There was another hand up and then you went away. No. Other thoughts on this Midrash? Tamar, please.
I would like to relate to this dilemma that Allison raised. Some of us don't see God in nature. Some of us are trying to see God equally in the good and the bad, and it tears the image of God to pieces that we don't know what to do. So my teacher, my heroine, his name is Rivka Lubitsch. She writes very witty midrashim. Many of her midrashim are here in Dirshuni. And she wrote recently a midrash that I'm going to put in the next volume, but I'll share it with you now. It talks exactly on this issue, Alison, the question of our generation. What is left? What can belief, faith mean to us? We're post-Holocaust people. We can't play the game of before, and we're rational. We can't force ourselves to believe in things that don't work with other ideas that we believe in. So I didn't plan on reading it, but it's such a good opportunity. I wonder if it will satisfy you, her answer. Who's willing to read it for us?
Phyllis, go ahead.
Okay. People of faith. The first generation, people of faith they were. And what was the faith of the first generation? Faith, emunah, which is to say truth, amen, i.e. emet. For they saw God and his wonders at the Red Sea, and knew as the truest of truths that God is the Lord, and took them out of Egypt, and split the sea for them, like a woman who sees her friend and knows as clear as day that she's alive and well. As is written, and the people saw God, and they believed in God and in Moses, his servant. Because they saw, they believed, and because they believed, they knew.
So this is the first part. The first part is the first generation. The folks in Egypt saw everything, so it was easy for them to believe. They believe in their real experience, authentic experience, and it's the word emunah has in it the word amen, which is emet, real. But there is the second generation, or the middle generation.
The middle generations, they too were people of faith. How? For they hadn't seen God and his wonders. Rather, faith, emunah, which is to say trust, emun, they placed their trust in the faith of their ancestors, that God is Lord, and it was he who took them out of Egypt and split the sea for them. They trusted God in what he had done and what he would do in the future to come. And they would say, I believe with perfect trust in the coming of the Messiah, and though he may tarry withal, I will wait for him at every day to come.
So most Jews in most, I don't know, the last 2,000 years, maybe are this middle generation that they didn't experience the emet in emunah. They didn't experience it on their bodies, but they kept they believed their parents, they believed the former generations, and therefore that was their faith, not as people who experienced it, but faith as emun, trust in their the story of the ancestors. But we know that we're not there even anymore. I remember when I was young, my father taught me a piece from Maimonides that it describes how faith is from generation to generation. It's as if it's evident because nobody lied on the way. And it was very sweet. He didn't have any other way to try to convince me to believe in the story. As we'll ask ourselves soon, what's the role of the story? But now let's talk about our generation, or Rivka's inner world.
The last generation, they too are called people of faith. How? This generation, after all, questions the truth and questions the faith of their ancestors, and does not place trust in anything. And how can a generation like this have faith? Rather, faith, which is to say, taking care of omnut. Taking care of omnut.
Emunah from the word omnut.
Okay. They take care of God and his Torah. They raise and rear them up till God becomes the Lord and his Torah becomes Torah. As is written, as the nurse, Omen, bears the nursing babe, period. For the nursing babe places trust, emun, in the nurse, Omen, and the nurse takes care, Omen, of the nursing babe, nurtures her, raises her, and loves her. As is written, the path of faith I have chosen, your laws I have placed before me. Where a person chooses to take care and to place before themselves God's laws, nurture them, raise them, and love them. And so it is written, and the righteous one lives through his faith.
So how does she explain our generation? The word leha'amin, to believe, has several meanings in Hebrew. The first she said with the first generation, le'amin as to experience, as to know it as emet, as truth. It also means le'amin, to trust someone. That was the second generation. They trusted their parents' story. But we are doing something else. When we are ma'aminim, we are omnim. Omnim is taking care of caregivers. This is when Moses and God have this hard back and forths after Israelites are sinning in one of the occasions in the desert. So God tells Moses, uses the image of nursing the people. And it's the same term, omen. So what she suggests is that by being interested in the Torah and in God, inventing new images, being busy with this question, is there anything behind our everyday life? Is there a care? Is there a meaning? By raising the mitzvot, the commandments, changing the laws, making them relevant, making them moral to our days. When all of this is alive, why do we live? How do we live? This is taking care. This is le'amin. It's both being caregivers, but also believers. And it matches the meaning of the word too. We don't usually use it, but maybe this is the task of our generation. I identify it, of course, tremendously. A little bit more about other midrashim that women wrote that has to do with Pesach. So as I mentioned before, there are several examples for, instead of 4 boys, there are 4 daughters, different concepts, different possibilities to play with these 4 daughters. If this year I did just a few weeks ago writing Midrash session to the rabbinical students in Shechter in Jerusalem, and I offered them to write new passages for the Haggadah, playing with traditional passages. So people wrote amazing things, and one of them was the 4 daughters. It was 4 guests around the table. One was an elderly woman who can't hear well, and everything is too fast for her, and she want to leave, go back to the room. And what do you do with her? How do you make her a part of the Seder? A second daughter was with autism, and everything is too much noise. The story, she knows exactly, why don't we do it exactly like last year? Why do all the changes upset her? So how do you make her feel good around the table? Another guest was blind, and she says, no, I didn't see anything, which is really the theological question. I didn't see, I wasn't there. How can you prove it to me? So what do you tell her? And there was another person with ADHD, I think. I don't remember, but each of them are there around our Seder tables, and we never think of how to prepare the Seder that they will feel so comfortable and that they are nourished, and there is room for them to challenge us. We can bear it and we can deal with it, and we can all grow from this. So that was a wonderful piece. But I want to relate to another set of midrashim, which has to do with Song of Songs. This is the scroll that we read on Pesach, Shir HaShirim, those beloved poems that the rabbis hesitated for a long time whether to include, to sanctify and include in the Bible. The poems that the lovers sing to each other are very, I forgot the word in English, chushani, sensual. And they didn't know if it's modest, how can we put it in a kosher book? And eventually Rabbi Akiva declared that there wasn't ever, that the best day ever on earth was the day that the scroll of Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, was given to us. Of course, it wasn't given to us. It was a poem, it was a set of poems that were gathered together, whatever. But he said it's so beautiful because it talks about the love between God and the Israelites. So this gave a hechsher to put the book in the Bible, but the price is that it's not the love between people, especially not between, the sensual love. It's a kosher love between the entity of the Jewish people and their God. So for 2,000 years, a lot was written about Song of Songs, a lot, but mostly theological readings, very different from each other. The mystical writings, the Kabbalah, the philosophical writings, Midrashim, Hebrew poetry. Even after the Holocaust, there were songs using Song of Songs to describe the horrors of the Holocaust. If you're interested, I can send you. I have everything on the computer because I was very busy with this for a while. But it's to bring it back to the body, to the problems in that occur in love, in human love, and the Bible has what to say about it. It took a while, but now a lot is written about it. I think it's good. And Israeli women wrote several midrashim on it. So some of them relates to the story as the relationship between God and the people of Israel, and some about the relationship between men and women. So this is also something to learn on Pesach, because this wasn't chosen arbitrarily to be read on Pesach. The drama of the coming out of Egypt wasn't to be free. We were taught wrongly, mistakenly, that it's a story about freedom, especially in the 60s, in the 70s. It became we were slaves, now we're free, and the whole world should be free. But if you read Exodus slowly and gently, God never promises freedom. God wants to take the Israelites out of Egypt in order that they will be his people, that they will work or observe serve him. He says it to Moshe again and again. You will tell Pharaoh, we want to go out to celebrate for God, and then there is the revelation in the mountain, and that was as if the end of the story, not that the Egyptians are drowning in the water. So what is it to be a slave of God or a worshiper of God? What's the difference between this and being a slave of Pharaoh? These are big questions. What is it to be in relationship? Where we will never be not in relationship in this world. So what do power relations have to be in every relationship, especially among lovers? When you love someone, you inevitably become vulnerable. sometimes even dependent. So how do we run these relationships? So this is also invitation that the Chag, this holiday, invites us to think about. So I'll just mention that one woman wrote a Midrash and Song of Songs. She was my chavruta many years ago. Her grandfather is a Holocaust survivor, and when we studied Shir HaShirim together many years in the chavruta, she was so upset with God, and she finally managed to put her theology, which is very interesting, a post-Holocaust theology of Dini Deutsch, a specific one, through analyzing different moments in Song of Songs. So this appears in Dirshuni if you would like to read it. And another person wrote about the power relations between lovers, the model that Song of Songs offers, as opposed to the a model in Ezekiel, an awful, horrible. You can read about it in the book. I'll mention now, because we have to finish soon, the last midrash that I received that has to do with Pesach, which was just a few weeks ago. So the writer is Liora Eilon from Kfar Aza. She's the one that wrote the Midrash, if some of you recall, about the woman who's wandering in the streets crying on her child, and the students of Rabban Gamliel were moving her from neighborhood to neighborhood. Never mind, her experience in the war was that she was hiding with her granddaughters and daughter-in-law in the shelter. Her son, who was the supposed to be in the, you know that each kibbutz has 10 folks that are supposed to be the guards, and God forbid anything happens. But so they have all their weapons in one room somewhere in the kibbutz. And when they realized what's happening, they all ran to this nishkiya where all the weapons were to take it. But the terrorists knew where the nishkiya is and were waiting them there and killed them all to begin with. So she was for more than 30 hours hiding in this room. Her story is very, very interesting, and I love to share it if anyone is interested. But recently she sent me another midrash, and we'll end by this. She was, how shall I say, passionate peace activist before the war. She's still. You know that many of the, actually all the kibbutznikim are traditionally leftists, and many of them were working with folks in Gaza, taking them to the hospitals for years, and working with them, trying to create enterprises and whatever. She was involved with this for years. And after the war, she was evacuated with everyone for a long time. She didn't go back. All her kibbutz didn't go back to their homes yet. It will take time. So while she was wandering around in Israel, mourning on her son and her friends, many communities invited her to share her story and with her granddaughter. Her granddaughter had a special story in that day, but that's
Tamar, I'm going to lovingly say we have 1 more minute.
Okay, so she decided that now she's gonna devote her life to make peace among Israelis, because it's not good what's happening here now. So she sent a midrash talking about chametz as something in the heart, and how do you clean the heart? How do siblings can clean their heart from chametz for Pesach? And she really establishes a whole technique of communication between foes. So it's relevant both for the right and left in Israel, and for us and the Palestinians. Very important midrash. It will be in the next volume. I didn't even translate it yet, but maybe next year, if we can do something like this, I can bring it already. So thank God that people still try to invent the wheels, and in a Jewish language. That's very moving for me.
Simcha, we hope we will have you back to do this again next year. Let this be next year with Tamar Biala at Central Synagogue is the new saying for Passover.